Hello everybody, it's Brad Wood again, and today I'm going to show you how to get started with code coverage in TestBox. So code coverage, if you're not familiar with it, is the ability of you to measure what actual lines of code are executed during your unit test and your integration test. The idea being that your test coverage may not be very comprehensive in your application, and there may be parts of your application that you haven't written tests for, and you don't have good visibility into that without some sort of code coverage. So code coverage came baked into TestBox 3.0, which we released it into the box recently. One requirement for code coverage in addition to TestBox 3.0 is you need to be using FusionReactor. If you don't have a FusionReactor license, you can go get a trial from the website and try it out for a couple weeks, and it is totally worth it. So if you don't have FusionReactor installed, but you do have a license procured, you can do that from the command line by simply running install command box FusionReactor. That will install a module in the command box, and all the servers you start will automatically have FusionReactor configured. I don't need to do that, however, since I have already installed FusionReactor and I already have my license key in place. So I'm going to show us how to get started in an empty directory right here. We're going to throw a ColdBox application into this folder. You don't have to use ColdBox to be able to get code coverage. In fact, a lot of people use TestBox completely outside of the context of ColdBox, but it's just going to be a little bit faster and simpler to show this for a ColdBox app. Now, as part of that ColdBox Create app, you'll see that we automatically got TestBox installed, which is great. So I'm going to go ahead and start up my server here in this directory. Okay, here we go. Server is up. Now, I've started a Lucy server, however, code coverage does work just as well under Adobe ColdFusion for what it's worth. So running the tests on our ColdBox app is very simple because our app template comes with a test runner out of the box. So we hit runner.cfm in the test folder, and we can see a passing set of integration tests here for our application. To enable code coverage, we're going to go back and we're going to edit that runner.cfm file. And there's a line right here, coverage enabled is set to false. We'll go ahead and change that to true. So let's go back and let's rerun those tests again in the browser. Okay, and here we have a new section that's arrived, code coverage stats, and we can see that our sample app has 100% coverage. We can click on this and get some high-level overview. You see the files with the best coverage, which is basically all the files in the app, and then there are no files with worse coverage because our sample app ships with 100% test coverage. You can also see the test coverage from the command line if you use the TestBox run command to run your test from the CLI. This is the typical sort of console rendering of your test results, and you see there's a single line right here. Coverage is 180 lines of code out of 180. LOC stands for line of code, and we are 100% covered. To make this slightly more interesting, let me go edit a file and add some code that's not covered by a test, so just so we can see what that looks like. Here's my main handler, and I'm going to create a copy of our do something method, and I'll call it do something 2, and I'll add a couple more lines of code inside of this. There we go. Let's go ahead and run our test again and see what our coverage shows up as. Here we go. So we've dropped to 98.4% coverage, and you can see here that our main.cfc is now not fully covered. That file itself has 90% coverage. So the next question you probably have is, okay, so what lines are covered, right, as opposed to the lines that are being executed? And so this is where we go back to our runner.cfm and we enable the coverage browser output directory. So let's just uncomment this line. I'm going to leave this at the default, which is in a coverage report folder inside of test results. With that uncommented, I'll go back and I will run my test again. And now we see a little bit extra output, code coverage browser generated in this folder. So the code coverage browser is a static site of just pure HTML files. Here's that folder that was created. You see this is just a static HTML site. You can zip this up. You can store it on an artifact server. You can send it to your boss and brag about your code coverage. And all you need to do to view it is to double click the index.html file. So what I'm hitting now is not a ColdFusion page, just a static HTML file. So here we see our 98% coverage, and we can click into main.cfc and we can get the details on it. So the white lines are lines that aren't executable, like comments or white space. The green lines are lines of code that actually executed during our test, and the red lines are lines that didn't execute, which is, you can see in this example, is basically the entire contents of this do something to method that we created. So this is pretty much all you need to know to get going. Again, you don't need to be using ColdBox. I just used that in my example. You can find the boilerplate here for your runner.cfm, and if you already have an existing suite of tests, you can just copy these CF params into your existing runner.cfm, upgrade your TestBox installation to be TestBox 3, and then simply change coverage enabled from false to true. And then as long as you have FusionReactor installed and set up ready to go, you will instantly start getting code coverage results from your test. Okay, there's a lot more here, and it is fully documented in our TestBox docs, which you can get to at testbox.ordersbooks.com. On the left, we have a whole code coverage section that walks you through all of the configuration settings you can run to control what folders get covered, what folders don't get covered, whitelist and blacklisting, file globbing, all this good stuff is on the docs. So hopefully that's whet your appetite, and you can go get some code coverage to see just how good or bad your tests are. All right, guys, have a good one.